MSM. Welcome inside week 2 of our series called Never Give Up. And today we are going to be finding out how not to break when the tension builds. How not to break when the tension builds. We're going to figure it out. How do we stand firm when the tension in our life builds and we want to break? How do we actually do that? Well, I believe that Jesus has a roadmap for us. It's got 2 steps on how not to break when the tension builds. But first, I want to recap a little bit of last week. I got to go to San Diego on Sunday. We got to hang out with our friends Daniel and Megan and their son. My wife and I, Bree, had a great time hanging out on the beach with them. I even got a little bit of a sunburn, but it's getting better now. So thank goodness for aloe vera and sunscreen as well. I was not prepared for the California sun. I thought 75 degrees meant you're good, you don't have to wear sunscreen, because that's what it means in Florida. You won't get sunburned from 75 degrees in Florida. But in California, you will get burned by 75 degrees sunny weather at a San Diego beach. So I learned something last week, and I hope you did too. But this week, we're going to be talking about how not to break when the tension builds. While I was at this vacation that we went on, I got to catch up and talk with my friend Daniel. We drove a ton of places together, and on our way to the beach, we got to talking about how old we were. That's what people do when they approach my age. They talk about how old they were. And he was like, "How old are you?" And I was like, "Oh, wow, I'm going to be 30 soon." And he was like, "Really? You're going to be 30? He was surprised. I was surprised. We all had a moment of silence and mourned my youth. But the point in that is that I remembered in that moment, wow, I'm old enough to remember what VHS tapes are. VHS tapes. And then we talked about that for a second too. Y'all need some help with this though, don't you? Because you probably don't remember what VHS tapes are. I got it. Here it is. Take a look at this. This is 2 VHS tapes. This movie is called The Sound of Music, and it's a story about a lady and her husband who have a family, and they're actually in Austria at the time just before World War II. So, troubled time in their world, but in even more troubled time in their family and in their nation as well. So the first tape is all about how they become aware of the tension and the drama in their surrounding area. And then tape 2 is the resolve of the tension in their nation. And it kind of gets to this point where they're all okay and they're all safe. But tape 1, man, it's a mess. It's a wreck. And what would happen is when people would release a movie and they would allow you to buy it, they would allow you to buy it on VHS. There was no streaming platforms like Netflix or Spotify or Hulu or Disney Plus or anything like that. You just bought the physical copy of the movie. Now, here's what would happen. Sometimes with really, really long movies like this one, there was 2 tapes. So we'd get to the end of tape 1, the story wasn't finished yet, they were still in trouble, and you had to stop the tape, and if you were kind, you would rewind it so that next time you didn't have to rewind it and then watch it. You had to get the film back to the beginning. That's why movies are called films. And then you would take the tape out and you would put in the second tape. And then you would get to see the rest of your movie. And there was always this tension that would build. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen. And this, growing up, was one of my more watched movies because it was a nice story about a family avoiding danger and coming together and loving each other. Now, when it comes to how to find out how not to break when the tension builds, we're going to take a look at not that movie. Don't be silly. We're not going to take a look at the movie, but instead we're going to take a look at what Jesus has to say to us. Because sometimes in life, tension builds in our life and it's not resolved yet. We don't know what's going to happen. We're left wondering, what will the future hold? Will I have friends in middle school? Will they like me? Will they betray me? Will we have friendships over the summer? Or will my friendships fade and grow distance and kind of break apart? What will happen with my friends? And y'all might be thinking well, that's not my story. What tension do I have in my life? Well, maybe your friend group is on lock and you're like, listen, my friends and I, we're having the greatest summer ever. Maybe for you, then, it could be something like this. Maybe for you, there's tension at home. You're not sure if mom and dad are going to stay together, or if they do, if they'll be happy. And if they are happy, will you be happy? Maybe there's some tension between you and your sibling. It's really difficult for you to get along with them. And it's really different than what you first imagined when they showed up in the world, or when you showed up into the world. And you're like, how do I not break under the tension of wanting to call them a name, or of them getting on my nerves? How do I not break under that tension? Maybe you're getting to the summer and you're feeling really overwhelmed because you're going into middle school next fall. And you're thinking, I don't know what that's going to be like. What will the teachers be like? Where will I go to school? Will the teachers be nice? Will they be kind? Will I know how to do the work that they're going to give me? So you can get all sorts of overwhelming feelings about that. Maybe you look in the mirror when you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't like what I see. That's not what I thought I was going to look like. When I look at other people, I like what they look like, but I don't like what I look like. I wish my nose was different. I wish my eyes were different. I wish my hair was different. I wish I was smaller or bigger or taller or shorter or heavier or thinner or stronger or more sleek. I wish I was faster. All of those things. You look in the mirror, you don't like what you see. There's tension in those moments. How do we not break under the tension and develop bad habits? Bad habit of going, I'm never going to look the way I want to look. Everybody else is better because I don't look the way they look. How do we not develop those bad habits and break under the tension? How do we not break under the tension of everyone else maybe learning a little bit faster than we do? Of going, it always feels like they listen to coach and they just know what to do. Or they listen to the teacher and they just know what to do. Or they hear things once and they just know what to do. And that's not my experience. How do I not break under the pressure of those moments and develop the habit of going, I'm never going to make it. Everyone else is smarter. Everyone else is like knowing what to do. I don't. That's just who I am. How do I not break under the tension of that moment and give in to those types of thoughts? And instead, stand firm while there's tension building in my life. How do we do that? How do we not break under the tension of feeling sad and angry and troubled? And I'm not just talking about we look at a problem in the world that Jesus says is a problem too, and we go, man, that upsets me. I should do something about it. That's not what I'm talking about. That's actually a good feeling. To be angry when you see injustice and to react the way Jesus would want you to react, that's a good thing. But when your sibling gets on your nerves and maybe you call them a name, that's not a healthy reaction to your anger that you're experiencing. So how do we manage those feelings and give those feelings to God when you go, you know what, I wasn't sad in 5th grade. I wasn't sad in 6th grade, but now that I'm in fill in the blank grade, I just feel sad. I don't know where that came from. I just feel really troubled, or I feel angry more than I used to feel angry. I don't know where that came from, but it feels tense and I don't like that feeling. What's wrong with me? How do we not break under those moments and go, well, this is just who I am, and I guess it's always going to be this way? How do we not break when the tension builds in our life? Well, I believe God has given us a really good roadmap here, and it's represented to us through who Jesus is when he is about to leave some of his best friends. He's about to leave earth and be in heaven with God forever and with us forever. And it's in John chapter 16, verse 33. He's kind of letting his best friends know, hey, there's going to be some tension in your life. There's going to be some times that are really, really difficult in your life. And he's setting them up for success. And I believe if we receive what he has to say to us today, that we're going to be able to stand firm when we want to break, when the tension builds. So let's go ahead and read John chapter 16, verse 33. I think this is a great verse for us to learn what it looks like to figure out what to do when the tension builds in our life. Here it is. Let's take a look. Oh, my apologies. Here's what it looks like. John chapter 16, verse 33. We're going to read in the New International Version. Go ahead and flip there now if you are, or flip there like you got a paper Bible. Maybe you do, and that's awesome. If you have a paper Bible, go ahead and flip to John chapter 16, verse 33. If you're on your phone or using a tablet, go into the YouVersion app and find John chapter 16, verse 33, and we'll read it together. Here we go. It says this. I have told you these things. In other words, I've told you about some of the trouble that's going to happen in your life. Why? So that you may have peace. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. That's a great verse for us to figure out what it looks like for us to not break when the tension builds. Let's read it again one more time. I have told you these things, told you there's going to be trouble, so that in me, you may have peace. Then he goes on to kind of give us another caution. In this world, you will have trouble. Not maybe, you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Take heart, I have overcome the world. Okay, so in this roadmap, Jesus says there's going to be trouble. What kind of trouble are we talking about? Well, that tension that we were just talking about a few seconds ago. Maybe sibling is really difficult to get along with right now. Maybe you're finding yourself a little bit more angry than you used to, or a little bit more sad than you're used to, and you don't like that. Maybe you look in the mirror, you don't like what you see. There's tension at home, or you are really overwhelmed by going into middle school next year. All of those things is exactly what Jesus is talking about. There's trouble ahead sometimes. He's going, hey, there might be some trouble coming in 6th grade. There might be some trouble coming in 7th or 8th or this summer. There might be some trouble in your family. But he says, I'm telling you this so that you have peace. Now, we don't like that, do we? I don't like that. Naturally, I look at that and go, well, if you're telling me about the trouble that's going to happen in my life so that I have peace, how about you just remove the trouble and then I'll have peace? How about you just get rid of the trouble, Jesus, and then I'll be able to breathe easy? That's not what he's talking about, though. What he's talking about is more like a good teacher getting a class ready for a test. He's saying when we expect trouble in a healthy way, we'll talk about more how to expect trouble in a healthy way in just a second, but when we expect trouble, and when he says, hey, be prepared for this, we can actually have more peace because it doesn't blindside us. It doesn't take us by surprise. We're not shocked when all of a sudden it's really difficult to love our sibling. We're not shocked when it's really difficult to go to school and to learn and to do what the teachers are asking us to do. We're not shocked when all of a sudden we go, you know what, I don't have 1,000 friends who are all my closest pals. It's actually really hard to make friends. We're not shocked by that because Jesus says, expect trouble. This is huge for us because at first it doesn't make sense until we view it through the lens of a great teacher getting us ready for a test that's about to happen. So God's kind of getting us ready for this in that way. He's saying, you know what? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I would be prepared for potentially a friend to maybe lie about you. And why is he saying that? Because people lied about him, and he was Jesus. He never did anything wrong, and people still lied about him. So he's saying there might be trouble in your friendships. There might be trouble in your house. Jesus is saying, hey, expect to have a bad day once in a while. Expect to not feel happy all the time. Expect to get angry and say something that you shouldn't say. Expect to not always be perfect. Expect that maybe for you, loving your sibling or obeying your parents, that could be really hard work. He's not saying prepare to be a failure. Prepare for always things to go wrong. Prepare for nothing to work out. Just have a doom and gloom attitude. It's if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying don't try. He's not saying, you know what? Since there's going to be bad days, you might as well sit at home with the covers over your head in bed. He's not saying that either. He's saying expect it to be a little difficult sometimes. Expect it to be hard. Expect it to take effort. it's kind of like this. It reminded me, as I was kind of prepping for this, it reminded me of me going into some tests in college. It was my freshman year of college, right? So first year of college. And I was so anxious and so scared of this test that I was about to go into. Looking back on it, so silly to be scared about this test, but I really was. I was in a class and the professor's name was Harold J. If you're out there, Harold J., Dr. Harold J., that is, I love you. You were one of the most amazing teachers ever. This guy was so great. He was funny. He had a dry sense of humor. He made everything into a joke, yet he had a way of teaching that you really latched onto the information and it made it stick in your mind. Fantastic professor. I ended up taking 3 classes with him. But this first one was world civilization, right? Not a very hard class, but for me, I was freaking out going into this test. So I was sitting there front row, all anxious on test day because it was my first test. I was sitting there just kind of fidgeting. I was tapping my fingers on my desk. I was rearranging myself in my chair. You could tell there was probably a little bead of sweat dripping from my head. And I was all tense. And he could tell as he was passing out the test papers that I was anxious. So he looked at me and he was kind of shocked that I was tense. And he looked at me, he's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just really nervous." He goes, "Why?" I said, "Well, because of the test." I couldn't understand. I was like, "Dude, of course I'm going to be freaked out. You're about to test me on all the things that I should know." And he looked at me, and I'll never forget this moment. He said, "Did you fall asleep in my class?" I said, "Well, no." He goes, "Well, did you come to my class?" I said, "Yeah, of course. I've come to every class." He goes, "Well, did you take any notes?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I thought he wanted to see my notes. So I was like, "Yeah, I've got notes. Let me get them." He's like, "No, don't show me your notes. You're going to be fine. If you didn't sleep in my class, you showed up to my class, and you took notes, you'll do great on this test." And he kept walking. And I just remember feeling so relieved in that moment that somebody that had been where I was going told me, "Hey, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. It's all going to work out. Hey, if you didn't fall asleep, if you took notes, if you were here, you're going to do great." And that's exactly what Jesus is kind of letting us in on. Hey, there's a test coming. There's days that are going to get tense. There's days where tension is going to build. There's relationships that are going to be difficult for us. There's seasons of life that are going to be really, really hard. But expect trouble. If you don't expect it, it might blindside you. It might really shock you and surprise you, and then you're going to be thrown off. Instead, prepare for it. Expect trouble. But here's the thing that I want us to remember. Don't get stuck on step 1. Don't get stuck on step 1, okay? So we see step 1 to not breaking under the tension when it builds is that we would expect trouble. Jesus said there's going to be some days where you're like, "I should have stayed in bed." But don't get stuck on step 1. Lots of times we get stuck on step 1. Sometimes you do and sometimes I do. We just get stuck on expecting trouble all the time. And so we rev ourselves up and work ourselves up, and we're constantly worried about what might happen. Oh, what if they don't like me? What if I don't do good on the test? What if I don't understand what the teacher's trying to say? What if my friend gets upset with me? What if I get upset with my friend? What if all of these things happen? And so we start to expect trouble everywhere we go. Don't get stuck on step 1. I get stuck on step 1 sometimes. Let me tell you a little story. Generally, about 2 to 4 times a month, when I'm asleep in bed, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, lean over, and I'll go, "Bree, Bree, Bree." And I'll wake up Bree. I'll wake up my wife, and I'll ask her, "Did we lock the doors? Do you remember locking the doors?" Why? Because I'm expecting trouble. Someone might want to break into the house. Someone might want to hurt us. There might be danger out there. We need to make sure that our doors are locked. Listen, is it a bad thing to lock your doors at night? No. Is it a smart thing to lock your doors at night? Yup. You don't want people coming in and stealing your food from your fridge, right? You want to be safe. You want to expect that there might be someone out there that's not safe and that wants to hurt me, so I'm going to lock my door. But what happens is sometimes I get stuck on step one and I go, did we lock the doors? Did we lock the doors? And every single time we've locked the doors. And Brie always goes, yes, we locked the doors. But what it looks like to get stuck on step one would be for me to go 2 minutes later, hey, did we lock the doors? Hey, did we lock the doors? Hey, did we lock the doors? Some of us get stuck in that perpetual moment of fear and being afraid. And we take Jesus' words and we only listen to that first part. Hey, expect trouble. So we're looking for trouble all the time. We're trouble hawks, right? We're just scanning the world looking for trouble. Oh, there it is. Don't get stuck on step one. Jesus has a part two to what he said. There's a second tape to this scripture here that we're reading, and it's step two. Oh, first I got to tell you this, though. You might be stuck on step one if you say things like this, or if you've heard yourself say things like this. I'm never going to make friends, so that's just how it is. Or, you know what? I don't want to introduce myself to them or invite them over or hang out with them because they're probably just going to hurt me anyway. Why should I forgive them? They'll probably just do it again. Why should I study? I'm probably just going to fail the test. Why should I try? Coach is just going to be disappointed anyway. Why should I ask mom and dad if I can help? They might get upset at me anyway. Why should I try and forgive my brother or sister? They'll probably just do it again and I'll say something I regret and then I'll have to apologize. So you know what? I'm just going to kind of be in my room and be away from everybody else. I'll try again, but I'm probably going to fail. If we're forecasting doom and gloom, we're probably only listening to the first tape. We're probably only watching the tension build, and we're not looking at what Jesus said in the second half of that verse, which is he has overcome the world. So how do we not stay stuck? How do we not stay stuck? Well, we move on to step two, right? We move on to step two, which is, remember, he has overcome the world. I'm making this really basic for us because I want us to understand it, and I want us to know that anybody can do this. Step two, remember that he has overcome the world. What does that actually look like? Well, what's really cool is that God kind of gives us an example. It looks like the life of Jesus. And it helps us understand exactly how not to break when the tension builds in our life. That we would expect the tension, that's step one. And then step two, that we would remember that God has overcome the world. That he has overcome the world. We expect that tension, and then we don't just expect it and prepare for it and get nervous about it and get scared about it and stay in that scenario, but we remember, oh, wait a second. God's already beat this. God's already seen me come through this. God's already conquered this for me. He's already walked through it. He's standing over me going, did you fall asleep in my class? No? Did you take notes? Did you come to class? Sure you did. You'll be fine. We're going to get through this together. So take heart. Remember, he has overcome the world. We'll get into more of what he's overcome in just a few seconds, but I want to tell you all a little story to illustrate what it looks like to have some actual trust in God, that he's overcome the stuff that you're going through right now in your life. When I was about 4 years old, my dad, my mom, and my brother and I went to like a amusement park, kind of like Great America, but it was in Wisconsin because we lived in Wisconsin at the time. So we go to this park and I see this big slide and I'm like, man, I really want to go down that slide, but I'm really scared. So my dad and I go up all of these steps and we get to the top and I'm like, this is so cool. And then the time comes to go down the slide and I start to freak out. I get so scared. I start to shake. Y'all, I have been there in these moments where I'm afraid. So I can definitely speak to these moments of how to work through fear. I was so afraid in that moment. My dad looked at me. I don't think he really understood like the level of fear that I was having at the time. He didn't understand why I was that afraid, but I was. And he knew the right thing to do. He looked at me and he goes, well, let's go down together then. let's go down together then. And so my dad sat down on the slide. He said, just take a seat right here. And so I sat down on his lap. He said, okay, we're going to go down together. And he pushed us down the slide, pushed off, and he hung on to me so that I was safe the whole time. We went down the middle slide so that we were extra safe. And I loved it. I screamed my lungs out because I had so much fun. I got to the bottom. The first words out of my mouth were, can we do it again? Can we do it again? And so we went back up the steps. I got to the slide again. And what happened? I was still a little afraid. But this time I knew, hey, Dad's got me. We've been through this already. I've gone down the slide. I faced my fear. The worst didn't happen. The best happened. I had a ton of fun, so it made it a little bit easier to go down the slide a second time, and to go down the slide a third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time. And then the next summer when we came back, guess what? That slide looked a lot smaller to me because I was bigger and Dad was with me. Here's what I'm saying. When we expect to walk up those stairs and feel a little tension, when we walk up those stairs and expect to go, I'm a little overwhelmed right now. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get through this. I don't know exactly what it looks like to get through this or to be successful in this area of life. When we look at that and we go, okay, I don't know what's happening. What does it look like to remember, oh, wait a second, God's overcome the world. What does it look like for you to go, hey, Dad, can we go down together? Can we walk into 6th grade together? Can we walk into this new middle school together? Can we make friends together? Can we understand what it's like to actually look in the mirror and love what we see and love who God made us to be? Can we understand, God, can you come with me as I navigate this tension between my mom and my dad and I? Can you come with me as we navigate this tension between me and my siblings? Can you help me with this? What does it look like for you to remember that God has overcome the world? Maybe it looks like asking a small group leader, hey, tell me about some times where you've gotten through things that you were really afraid of. Maybe it looks like asking a small group leader and saying, hey, listen, I've got something going on in my life. It doesn't feel huge to you, but it feels big to me. Would you please help me with it? I don't know what to do. Maybe it's asking mom and dad for help and go, listen, I know that Sam said that God has overcome the world, but would you help me because I don't understand what it looks like for me to overcome my science class? Would you help me, mom and dad? Would you help me with a tutor or with more education or with patience and grace? Or maybe it's asking God for help and saying, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. But would you give me peace as I walk into this class? Or would you give me peace as I walk into this friendship where things seem off? Doesn't feel like it used to. God, would you give me peace as I experience fear and anxiety and sadness? Would you help me figure out what I should do about it? Would you help me be brave enough to ask somebody to be involved in my life that can actually do something about it? Would you help me be brave enough to ask mom and dad for counseling? Or would you be brave enough to ask mom and dad to help me through these moments, or ask a small group leader to help you through those moments? Remember, we get a roadmap. God's so good to us. We get a roadmap of what to do when the tension builds. We don't have to break. I know it feels like you have to. I know it feels like you're destined to. But there's a second tape to this. There's a part 2. There's a second half to that verse. Remember this. We don't have to break. We got a great roadmap from Jesus on what to do. First, we expect there to be trouble. We're not surprised by bad days when they happen. We're not surprised when things aren't easy. Jesus said there would be trouble. He said, prepare, get ready. But that doesn't mean that we have to live in constant fear and anxiety, going, what's going to happen next that's terrible? No, we get to live under the understanding that he's already overcome the world. He's already did it. He's already been there, and he conquered it. He overcame it for us, and now we get to do it together, him and you, him and I. What has he overcome? He's overcome loneliness. He knows what it feels like to be lonely. He knows what it feels like to be lonely. He's overcome sadness and depression and anxiety. He knows what that feels like, and he's been in those moments. He knows what it's like to walk through those moments. And I would encourage you as well, tell somebody about it. Let them know that you're experiencing that. Not just a friend that's your same age, but tell a parent, tell a friend that's older than you and that can do something about it. Tell a pastor, tell a small group leader, tell mom and dad, tell somebody that has wisdom on how to handle that. Don't just keep that to yourself. We don't have to do life alone. You're way too precious to Jesus to do life alone. Maybe you're thinking, okay, but what are the other things that he's overcome? Well, he's overcome fear. He knows what it's like to be afraid. Jesus has overcome the tension in family. He knows what it's like to have tension in family. He's overcome being overwhelmed. He knows what it feels like to have more on his plate and more to do than he knows what to deal with. That's the trouble that he's talking about. He knows what it's like to feel all alone. He's been there. He knows what it's like to feel lied about. He knows what it's like to feel not liked. He knows what it's like to feel isolated and upset. He knows what it's like to feel angry. He knows what it's like to feel sad. And he's overcome all of that. And sometimes those emotions that I mentioned, like anger, we're supposed to be angry, like Jesus was angry, or we're supposed to be sad, like Jesus was sad. There was a time in our Bible where one of Jesus's friends passed away. And he was sad. He wept tears bitterly. It says that he was very troubled. So it's okay to be sad when something sad happens. It's okay to be happy when something happy happens. It's okay to go through those emotions. But what I'm talking about is when we're just overwhelmingly sad and we don't remember the last time we were happy, or we're starting to feel even more sadness. God's overcame those feelings. He's got a way for us to navigate through them and to hang on to the community around us as we walk through them. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to remember we've got a roadmap. You can make it through this tension that you're experiencing right now. God's already overcame it. You've got a whole student ministry and a whole ton of people here that absolutely love you, care about you, and want to walk through every single step of tension in your life with you. We wake up hoping that we get to partner with you and walk through tense moments with you. You've got a family who loves you, and you've got God and Jesus walking you through these moments where even if nobody else was there, they'd still be right there with you, walking with you every step of the way, saying, hey, look out, there's trouble coming, but don't worry, I've already overcome it. So right now, let's go ahead and let's pray. Thank you, Jesus, that you warn us that there's going to be bad days, there's going to be tension in our life. And God, thank you so much for letting us know that you've already overcome that in our life and that we get to walk with you through it. Thank you, God, so much for that. I would ask you right now that if there's anyone out there that feels alone or sad, overwhelmingly sad, overwhelmed in general, and they see that there's some tension in their life, that they would be bold enough and that you would give them the strength to reach out to a parent, a coach, a teacher, a small group leader, or a pastor in their life that cares about them and that loves them, because I know you love them and you want what's best for them. We ask you for that. We thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. Awesome. See ya. Peace.